Hey guys, we just wanted to say hey, and we miss you and we love you and I hope you're doing good. The youth room is definitely a little lonely without you all in here. But I wanted to share with you a message that I'd read in one of my devotionals this week about fear, which I think is a good topic for us in this time that we're in right now. So it's kind of been a reoccurring feeling over the past few days. We turn on the TV, and within minutes I can feel tense and stressed as we're bombarded with more news about information or statistics about the coronavirus. We turn on the radio and they're talking about it, or turn on my social media and my news feed is just flooded with comments or shared news stories about the virus. And I can't help but to notice what happens to my mind and my heart whenever this topic comes up, and I begin to feel anxious about everything in this unfamiliar time and the circumstances that we're in. But then I also think back to some of my old Sunday school teachers or my old youth minister, certain songs that I'll hear on the radio that remind us that in Scripture we're instructed not to fear. And Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you." And in Matthew 6 we're told, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself." And again in Philippians we're told not to be anxious about anything. As much as we want to be fearless or even immune to the circumstances around us, the reality is that when we're faced with the unpredictable circumstances that we're in, our first response isn't always what we would hope for it to be. And although I would wish my first response is one of courage and hope, that the truth is it isn't always that case. And I more often respond with feelings of anxiety and unease. But it's not easy to admit our fear in our Christian culture today. We're not supposed to be afraid. That to admit fear feels like that we're admitting failure in a way. And maybe it feels that if we're confessing our fear, that we're confessing that we don't have what it takes, or that our faith doesn't measure up. And maybe we're not as strong as other Christians that we see who seem to have it all together and all figured out. But maybe the worst feeling of admitting our fear is that it seems like we're admitting that God isn't big enough, and that puts him in a bad light to the rest of the world. So what does God really think about my fear? Is he disappointed or is he irritated? And so I'm reminded of the story of Joshua. And God's laying out instructions of incredible promises to Joshua as he's taken over the leadership from Moses to lead the Israelites. God tells him early on to be strong and courageous in the days ahead. But then we read a couple verses later, and he has to tell him a second time to be strong and courageous. But this time he adds, "Do not be afraid or discouraged." And then later on in the very same chapter, for a third time, he repeats it to Joshua. Now, why would God tell him this, not once or twice, but even a third time? And maybe it's possible that Joshua, the guy that led the Israelites around the walls of Jericho, even he was sometimes afraid. And so the reality is that fear is a natural human response to things that are beyond our ability to control. And it's not something to hide or be ashamed of for feeling this way, but the real question we need to ask is not whether or not we're going to be afraid, but what should we do with the fear when we do have the fear. And God doesn't condemn us for being afraid. And I remember whenever I was younger and a thunderstorm would roll past our house, especially at nighttime. And it would be lightning would be flashing in the house, and the thunder would shake the windows, and I would be really afraid. So I remember running into Mom and Dad's room and jumping into their bed and just waiting for them to wrap me up in a hug and reassure me and tell me that everything was going to be okay. But one thing that they didn't do is they didn't criticize me or judge me for feeling afraid. And in the same way, God doesn't want to criticize us or judge us for being afraid, but instead He wants to comfort us and reassure us like any earthly parent would do to their child in times of fear. And so it's okay to be afraid, but what are we going to do with our fear? And Psalms 34:4 says, I sought the Lord and He answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. So the first thing we can do with our fear is admit that we're afraid and own up to it and call it what it is. You can't fight an enemy that you haven't named. Being ashamed of fear simply gives it a big advantage in your life. Find someone you trust and open up to them about what you're feeling and what you're worried about, and you'll be amazed at what happens when you open your feelings and put your feelings into the light. And the second thing we can do is we can focus on something bigger, the bigger truth. And so our fears and concerns may be completely valid, especially in this time that we're in, but we can still choose to focus on something greater and not let our fear rob us of our joy. And the third thing is to not let it paralyze you. Fear begins to win whenever we stop moving, and we want to make a game plan of how you can best deal with the changing circumstances. And what advice would you give to a friend who is feeling the same feelings that you are feeling? And then another way is to guard your eyes and your ears. So if the TV's causing a lot of your anxiety, limit your exposure to the TV. If Instagram leaves you stressed or worried, then maybe it's time to put that aside and not be on it for a while. And just be sensitive to your feelings and what's prompting those feelings. And then you can better learn how to not let that fear come in based as a result of certain activities. But if you find things that bring you more peace, then step those up and do some of those more. And lastly, and most importantly, is we can put our trust in God. We may not be in control, but we know that He is, and that He loves us, and He promises to be with us in every circumstance that we're in, and we can trust that He's going to provide all that we need. And if you're like me, that you know He provides even more than what we need, and especially in times right now where some things may be less, that trust that your needs are going to be met, even if not all of our wants necessarily are met. And just know that God is still good. He is still faithful. He still loves you, and He invites us into peace and rest today if only we receive it. John 14:27 says, Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. So we pray with you. God, I thank you for being a faithful God and for holding your promises, that you're gonna have everything in control, and that we can run to you and rest in your peace. And let us not fall into the fear that the enemy wants us to be into and trap us in, but know that you've conquered this world and you've conquered the enemy and you've defeated death. So there's nothing that we should be afraid of. But God, even when we do feel the fear start creeping in, let us just remember to run to you and to be comforted by you, because you're our perfect heavenly Father who holds true to His promises. And God, we love you and just ask that you be with us in these uncertain times. And we ask these things in your name. Amen. Thanks, guys. We miss you. We love you. Hope you're doing good. And we will be in touch. We're going to try our Zoom. We're going to try our Zoom meeting for youth group this week. So I hope you join us for that. Mia hopes you join us for that. And we love you guys. Bye.